Hello and welcome to Business Today. I am Siddharth Zarabi and you're watching Easynomics. On this special episode with Business Today editors, Saurav Majumdar, the editor of Business Today magazine, and my friend and colleague Anand Adhikari, the managing editor of Business Today magazine. Welcome Saurav, welcome Anand.
Thank you Siddharth.
Great to have you at a time when the whole world, including the financial world, is reacting to what the Reserve Bank of India, the Monetary Policy Committee, and Dr. Shaktikanta Das had to say with their surprise, out of policy, unexpected 40 basis points hike, the first after 2018 in the repo rate, and a CRR hike along with the accommodative stance. So the mechanics of that decision are known, but I want both of you to break it down for our audience, that one big question that we are asking. And I start with you, Saurav, with that question. Do you expect inflation of the kind that we are witnessing currently will get tamed by this 40 basis points hike and the CRR liquidity suck out of 87,000 crore?
Well, Siddharth, I think the first steps have been taken. I think everybody is clear that one hike of this kind and a CRR, 50 basis point hike will not tame the kind of inflation we are witnessing, because as we have seen, and as I think economists have said already, that the inflation is now becoming generalized, which is why the reason that RBI had to do this. And the basic point being that I think there will be more hikes. We have to be bracing ourselves for at least another 50 to 75 basis points hike through the fiscal. Some even have said 100 basis points. So I think this is just the first step. We can question and we can discuss the timings aspect. I'm sure during the course of this show, we will discuss it. That's a very interesting point itself. But I think to the kind of generalized inflation we are witnessing, also the external, factors which have led to this inflation, I think warrant more such hikes and not just this.
Anand, let me take that point that Saurav made about the timing first. More than the quantum, I think it was the timing that came as a bit of a surprise, because it was pretty much factored in that the RBI will respond. The question was, is it going to be the first or will it be the last? What's your own sense about the timing?
See, so that timing, if you see, I think there are two or three broad, major reasons. One is about the interest rate differential. If you see, US was about to hike, their rates by 50 basis point, and that would have meant, a narrowed, if you see the interest rate differential, now US at 0.25 and India at 4% repo, it was 3.75%. Okay. Now, if you look at US post 50 basis point, like 50 or 75 basis point, differential was 3.25. That would have led to huge outflow of dollars. And if then dollars are already moving out from the country, and if you see the last 1 year, I think FIs, they have already pulled out more than 1 lakh crore from the Indian financial market. So one big reason was the interest rate differential.
So will I be right and fair in asking you that this hike has perhaps less to do with taming price pressures and had more to ensuring that portfolio inflows continue and do not get impacted, especially when you have a big ticket LIC IPO or at the same time?
I don't agree, Siddharth. If currency depreciates, then you have this threat of imported inflation. Assuming even the crude price, remains the same, but if you have a depreciated currency, your imports will be higher. So, there was a threat of, imported inflation.
Let me join battle with you, Anand. Anand, let me join battle with you on that. We have already imported inflation through crude oil.
Right.
Okay. And we have very little control. And I think we must all acknowledge and support and applaud in some ways the government's decision to go ahead with cheaper Russian crude to whatever extent to help keep the overall Indian crude basket low. However, inflation will continue to remain imported because of the nature of our oil dependency on imports. So what does the RBI achieve with this?
No, so, see, there are two variables, Siddharth. One is the crude prices. Now, crude prices going up. Another is the currency part, currency depreciating. If currency remains the same, crude prices, goes up, then also you get the inflation. If crude prices, I'm saying tomorrow's, let's assume, crude prices remains the same, but you have a depreciated currency, then also there's a threat of imported inflation. So that is just the one part,
So Siddharth and
currency
Anand, if
inflation
I
is
may
up.
just jump in here,
Yeah, go ahead, Saurabh.
I think food and fuel, these are parts, and some of those, that part of inflation is literally, actually, the government will also have to look at the, that aspect of it. But I think what RBI wants to achieve with this off-cycle rate hike is that it does not become a generalized and percolate to other segments of the economy. I think that is the reason from within RBI's thing, because if you see the governor's statement, he's also talking about financial stability. I think that is very important because inflation is the main task. Controlling inflation is the main task of the Reserve
Saurabh,
Bank, right?
is that why there was a tone of urgency in the governor's remarks?
Well, there is a tone of urgency for more ways, for more reasons than one. I think there is a chatter in the market that it was not done on April 8th because of the LIC IPO. In that sense, this is again conjecture, in the realm of conjecture. There was also this whole thing about, are we falling behind in our battle to contain inflation, as other central banks have started raising rates aggressively, and that same night after we raised rates, you saw the Fed raising rates, Bank of England also now. So there's this whole, we don't want to get left behind in this whole battle. Global inflation is now a global phenomenon, right? So we don't want to be left behind.
And Siddharth, just to add the LIC.
Quick interruption, Anand, before I come to you. Quick interruption. So, Saurabh, do you agree with that meme from Bahubali? Katappa ko kisne mara?
No, in fact, rather than that, Katappa ko kisne mara, I would think that Governor Das was trying to save Katappa because of the fact that, or rather Bahubali, because of the fact that, you wanted to let that little time go before LIC IPO hits. If you remember, if it had done in April 8th, he would have still been criticized for doing it just before the LIC IPO. So, and then the markets would have gone into a tailspin.
Trying to take that.
But go ahead. Just to add on the LIC, because I have a very different view, Siddharth, there. LIC is too small an issue for RBI, which is the monetary authority, of country, and also looking at the.
A lot of LIC fans might get hurt with your statement that it is too.
But Anand, one thing is there. Now, don't forget that the Reserve Bank and the much against what used to happen earlier. Today, the post-COVID, particularly during COVID and now, government and RBI are very much in sync. I mean, it's not that, they are taking orders or anything, but they are very much in sync. Governor Das was one of the foremost, individuals who really supported with monetary policy and liquidity, opening up of liquidity when the government was really battling growth, the decline in growth during the peak of COVID. So I think that point is now, that is why these rumors come. And he comes from the government, so that point always will be there.
Sir, the very fact that RBI reduced the issue size, LIC, reduced the issue size, from 5% to 3.5%, shows that government and the RBI are in sync and they are working together.
Exactly, that's exactly my point. So I think these are just, again, there is no way where we can confirm what was the real reason for the timing. But one view, Siddharth, and I might add here, that is that the data between February's policy statement and now is definitely much more worrying for RBI. So RBI and all central banks typically go by data. And, once the data has started really raising, red flags there, for instance, this CPI print of March of 7%, in the danger zone for RBI. So you had to really do something about it. There was no way it could wait. And that hurry and urgency, and if you remember, there's an interesting point in the policy statement where the governor says that, there was a 40 basis points follow-up rate cut in May. In 2020, and that same 40% has actually been removed. But in the second, so the second part, and that 75 remains, which is why, again, to sort of talking about anchoring inflation expectations, etc., that 75% remains, and so therefore 75 basis points. So that can always go away anytime, and that's what people are betting on. That FY23 will see at least a 75, about a 75 to 100 basis points increase in this thing. So, but the question is that, what will that do, and how often will that? So June policy, definitely, I think there will be another rate hike, going by the urgency which RBI has shown.
Let me take that point to Anand. And before you answer that, Anand, the point that Saurabh makes about what does the future hold for us, another point that he raised, do you think in this move, Mint Street, and you have spent your entire professional life, considerable working experience covering banking and matters, Mint Street, is Mint Street in sync with North Block on this move?
My feel is that yes, if you see the last 2 years, RBI, they have been supporting growth. I mean, they have kept the interest rate low. I mean, repo was nearly for 2 years, repo rate was at 4%. Even the withdrawal of liquidity, if you see, is very calibrated. Even now, even in the governor talking about the accommodative stance, because there's a huge liquidity there, and they want to support the government borrowing program. There's a huge 14 lakh crore plus government borrowing program. So,
massive program. So they are talking about accommodative stance, and their moves are very calibrated. If I say even when they are withdrawing the liquidity from the market. Anand, one more quick point. The governor in his previous policy speech had spoken about fuel taxes, which is the excise levy by the center as well as the state levy, and we know how much that contributes. And this is a peculiar kind of taxation architecture amongst the largest emerging economies. India is quite unique when it comes to the quantum of taxation on petrol, diesel, ATF. And from then we saw the government, both at the state and centers, didn't do much. The Prime Minister, of course, made a public remark about it. But what has escaped attention, Anand, and we've been covering it at Business Today, is that for now, more than a month, daily petrol, diesel price hikes have been stopped. So when I was checking around in North Block, one of the things that one got to hear was, okay, the government has not taken excise hit, the center. States are free to do what they can or they want to do. Right now, the hit has been passed on to oil marketing companies. And the RBI's demand on fuel taxation has been answered willy-nilly in a different way. Mm-hmm. Do you think that Mint Street would accept this logic, that the government is doing its thing as far as taming inflation, the supply side cost pressures is concerned?
See, if you see every rupee one, cut in excise duty will I think lead to some 16,000 crore, loss to the exchequer. So it's a huge amount. It's a huge amount, and RBI has been demanding, there can be cut on the custom duty, cut on the other imported items, on the food grain side and all. I mean, that has been the demand of RBI, because inflation is one fight where both, the government and the RBI, they both have to, work together. Government more on the duty side, RBI more on the interest rate side. Right. And even earlier there was the food grains item which India exports. I mean, maybe there's a demand, for putting some sort of a ban and all that. So that all come from the government side, So yes, I mean, this is one fight where both have to work together. I mean, I don't see government has their own constraint, and tomorrow, if the growth comes down, I'm sure revenue collection will get hit tomorrow.
Saurabh, this point that Anand makes about growth impact of this hike, and it's like you said, it's pretty much certain that we should now be talking about by June a cumulative 100 basis points hike at least, right? Plus,
may not be by June, Siddharth. It could be by FY23 towards. Yeah. I mean, the all told cumulative, yes.
And also further CRR adjustments. If
yes. Yes.
The question, therefore, is the RBI and therefore the government also willing to sacrifice short-term growth in order to control the more politically sensitive issue of inflation?
Well, this question also has been discussed among economists and the financial markets, Siddharth. But I think the basic point being, currently we are seeing a lot of positive momentum on the services side. If you see the PMI print, if you see airlines, hotels, general contact-based services, which were totally sort of wiped out during COVID, I think they're coming back with a bang. And also remember, the companies' corporate balance sheets have also been cleaned up. They are now in a better position, and many of them actually have started factoring in after the February war, etc., and the global headwinds. They've started factoring in that there will be a rate hike of anywhere between 70 to even 100 basis points. So I think that is why this sudden off cycle one was a bit of a surprise, because you could have done it even in June or even in a little bit in April. So this timing is a different issue. But like I said, I think there is definitely there will be some short-term pain for sure. But at the same time, I think there is enough cushion from the supply side, from the services side, which can actually negate some of that, because the supply services side is actually a positive for the economy. One more point I wanted to sort of highlight here as we are chatting, Siddharth, is the RBI has always been known and always been importantly important for clarity. Every word the governor says or every word the MPC says, people hang on to it, and markets move because of that one word here or there.
Yes.
It is in this particular case, what has spooked some people is also the stance. Something which we were also discussing earlier. The point is that you say it is an accommodative policy. You have hiked CRR by 50 basis points, taking away more than 87,000 crore from the system in one shot. You have hiked 40%, 40 basis points. You've hiked the rates and more to come. And you say that, it is accommodative. And yet in the same sentence, you say that to remove the accommodation, also MPC is committed to tackle inflation and yet support growth. So if you see that line in this Times Governor statement, it is all kinds of things. It is accommodative, it is non-accommodative, it is supporting growth, it is taming inflation. So
is it muddled communication? Because Saurav seems to be making that point very politely, that the communication could have been better perhaps, because from ultra accommodative to accommodative, should we make are there enough words to really justify a difference?
No, just to add on the growth part, for sustainable high growth, India has a dream of this 5 trillion economy. Now for sustainable high growth, you need low and stable inflation, and if the inflation trajectory is crossing 6% mark, which is the upper band set for the RBI and the MPC, then RBI's hands are tied. They have to act, and this is what they are doing right now. If your long-term goal is intact, so there's no option but to act now.
There was no option. As we wind down this conversation, I come to you, Saurav, very quickly for what's your own sense? We are in a very sort of volatile environment. The Ukraine war, which became the immediate trigger for this rather significant turn of events, because remember the Business Today budget conclave that we did days after the budget, the mood was completely different. From February to March and to May now, you can see that things have changed. So if we were to recap those key points for our viewers, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, very difficult for anyone to predict which way it will go. The second is, what will different central banks do globally? Because price pressures, food inflation in America, which was unheard of for decades, and their loose monetary policy now coming to bite them in the changed circumstances. Then the direction of oil prices. This is the third factor that I'm listing. And the fourth is, as a consequence, commodity prices overall. And the fifth is inflation and growth. We have discussed all of these five, but out of these five, what is the most significant risk, according to you, for our macroeconomic stability in the next 3 to 6 months?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Siddharth. I would think it's a cocktail. It's a very dangerous cocktail of many of these things. The war does not seem to be abating anytime soon. It's in fits and starts. One has some hope, some clarity emerging from there, but it's not happening. Commodity prices, and that is one thing which is why I think everywhere the RBI is keeping a hawk's eye on inflation, because that's exactly what I said in the beginning. They don't want it to become very generalized and percolate to all segments. That is the second point. And growth, of course, see the growth, as I said, the point is there are pockets which are doing well. So RBI will be hoping that those pockets continue to do well. There is no real fresh dangerous wave of the pandemic again upon us. That is another third imponderable. You wouldn't want to be, no matter how much we say and criticize or discuss, you don't want to be in Governor Das's shoes right now, because because ultimately he is the guy who will have to really take on the reins with the MPC and decide which way. So I think all these factors continue. And if you see again the policy, I go back to the policy statement of May 4, where he clearly says that inflation, price stability is going to be the bedrock of the entire monetary policy stability and the road ahead. So if price stability is going to be the bedrock, and it always has been, but even more so now with inflationary expectations going, rising, we need to really be prepared for some tough times ahead on the rate side. Depositors will be probably happy, fixed depositors, but the fact of the matter is, I think, corporates, markets, etc., will have to be bracing for what definitely a withdrawal of this accommodative policy, which we've been seeing globally, and that's happening. It's upon us.
Anand, the same question with a slight additional point. So we've seen the Indian economy be on a bit of a roller coaster. And I think the last 7-8 years can be divided into 2.5 year plus kind of cycles. Mm-hmm. The interest rate cycle has very clearly turned, Anand. Both of you have made that point. What can we expect in the next 6 months to 12 months?
See, clearly, I see, some damage on the growth side. If you see, private capex cycle is yet to pick up. Government was spending money, but now, with interest rate going up, government will have, constraint in raising money at a lower cost. Now, money will come at a much higher 7%. 10-year GSEC, if you see, is now ruling at 10 plus percent. So I see, some and higher interest rates are going to impact the disposable income of households, and like we say, inflation is a tax on poor. I mean, it impacts everybody,
But it's the worst on the poor people.
Right. So I see some damage will happen on the on the growth side, because we are yet to recover or go back to the pre-pandemic levels. So,
one point, Siddharth and Anand, I wanted to make here, which is very important. Anand just touched upon that right now, is this whole point about capex, private capex, which we've been again discussing. Anand and I, we've been internally discussing a lot in that and written about it. See, the private capex was just about to turn. If you ask me, if you talk to people, that the government has done its bit this time in the budget. Hopefully, all the announcements will translate into actual spending, which was not the case last year. But whatever, there is the announcement and there is the intent. Now, private capex was supposed to, as demand comes back, with the economy coming back and out, opening up, the demand will actually drive the utilization of capacity. Now, in many cases, we are still below capacity in terms of capacity utilization. So I think now with demand, so unless there is clear, tangible line of sight that demand is there, corporates will not again, start spending. So they will again hold back. So my suspicion is, because of the rate hike and all these, other things which we just discussed, I think corporates will again hold off on making fresh investments for a while. Obviously, because of also cost of funds having increased and all of that. So I think it, unfortunately, it is again, like the finance minister said, if you remember, Siddharth, at our BT conclave when we have met her, she said that, you may think I'm transferring my responsibility to a global place, but actually the most of the threat to my challenge, when we asked her about challenges, will come from outside the country. And exactly that is what has happened. So I think, unfortunately, private capex will have to wait again.
And since interest rate will impact the only engine that was running, the government capex, So
True, true.
Absolutely, and that viewers is an expert take, unvarnished take, and an honest take as we uh, absorb the consequences of what the RBI and the MPC have done beyond just the headline numbers. And I just want to sort of summarize it by saying and repeating that if you have seen our economy go through phases, I see them as three cycles. The fourth cycle seems to have begun, where growth, which was picking up, and we could have been hopeful that it would have sort of gotten real good momentum and become steady state for some time. There is now a clear threat on it, cost pressures, inability to pass on costs, and now costlier capital. And then coupled with the overall uncertainty that we seem to be getting out of after COVID. So very clearly, we still have to keep our belts tightened. And depending on where you are, caution is perhaps the best way and guidance forward. Saurabh Majumdar, Anand Adhikari, thank you very much for your time with us on this special episode of Easynomics. I'll be back with more. Till then, bye-bye.
Thanks, Siddharth. Thanks.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.